There we go. Guess you can start recording.
Yeah. Wouldn't want to miss this.
No, the boring tech startup, the shit not launching. It's great. Why miss any of it?
Oh, we won't miss a thing now.
Oh, it's wonderful.
We're good to go.
Excellent.
That's better. We're 8 seconds in. I haven't punched anything, so that's good.
It's true.
It's wonderful. Can you switch over to the stream? I know it'll be a delay, right? But it says it's streaming, so.
It is streaming.
Cool. All right.
But you have it set up so that this is just a projection. That's a projection of what's on here instead of being a separate monitor, so I can't actually look at OBS if you want to have the logo.
Oh, we can do that. Hold on. I will fix that. Hello, Internet.
These are those technical things we were talking about
Yeah, someday
that we
when
didn't
I
want you to
out-
miss.
Yeah. We didn't want you to miss out on the struggle. How bad
I'll just
can
edit this
I
part
be
out.
at the internet?
One of the best ways to learn is by messing up. So we're showing you that by demonstrating it.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, TJ, feels weird calling you that. Curly Jason, you. Just
Yeah, what is your
I
name?
refer to you as you
Mhm.
for now on with the finger every time.
There we go.
Do you have any are you like a bottled water household or like get it from the tap kind of?
Get it from the tab.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no water here. You'd have to go back in the house. But yeah, we have a thing in our fridge. It says the filter's bad. It's a lie. We just haven't reset the filter thing.
Fair enough. I will return.
Oh, she has the same fair enough that Jason does.
Mhm.
I've never noticed that before.
Why am I getting extend these displays? Keep the changes. And then now, close these. We can drag these to over there. And then we can minimize it like a dipshit so that it doesn't go where I want it to go. Spanny boo. It says we are offline. I don't know what I'm.
I gave you control for 2 minutes and it's dead already.
What?
I wonder if my dogs are out.
You good? The little one snuck out too. Shut the dogs out. I don't understand why this is. It says it's streaming, but it's. Oh, there you go. It began.
No. I was like, oh, that sounds good.
I was like, oh no, something serious happened. I guess we finally have an answer to the age-old question: who let the dogs out?
No, okay, that's wow.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good.
It's a 30-year-old question.
That might live but unstable. We apologize to the 0 people watching. But yeah, now if anybody chats, I can see it. All right.
Thank God no one heard that joke.
Yeah.
We'll edit that out.
This is why people edit things. Apologize to those welcome on the internet, folks. We're going to do this super awesome thing where I look at my phone and don't talk, because that is exactly what the 0 people on the internet are going to tune in for. So,
That's what audio medium is for.
of course.
Yeah.
Staring at your phone and not talking.
Yeah. What kills me is I know I have these, right? I did a bunch of these. I have literally no clue on the drive where they're at. So, it's pretty stellar.
What are you looking for?
So I have all these files written out. So, oh, hey, there we go. Endless Rebels. Let's see if I can find it.
The folder you keep your files for this in is
yeah,
labeled Endless Revels.
No, but the Endless Rebels started out as one of these 60-second setups. So,
Ah, okay.
all right. Well, so while I fail to find this, because Lord knows it's going great. Let me explain what the things are. So, welcome internet for the 37th time. Let's get officially started now, and I'll fall apart while somebody else is talking. That's what we're going to do. And there's network error, of course. Wow, we're good to go. Anyways, welcome to episode 2. I have a bunch of noob-related topics to go over. Talk about the charity event that's coming up, as we have some more details on that. Finally, it kind of got solidified what's going on a little bit. And we can talk about the event and things while I pull this up. So the plan for today. So I have one of these 60-second setups. They're a creation. I wanted to come up with something. So it was intended to be a YouTube.
What did you do? You okay?
I wasn't this lucky to be attacked by this one dog. It was the big one this time.
Yeah,
no.
our tech gremlin let dogs out and nearly died. You can do the thingy with the stuff and things.
There's a reason why we had her locked up when you guys got here.
Yeah.
She's a bit of a terrorist.
She is, in fact. So, anyways, go over the charity event. We got some more information. Wanted to do the 60-second setups. Kind of a day one DM tip. I got the idea. It's going to be a YouTube channel someday when I'm not a slacker. So anybody listening that steals this, I had it first.
Get that a little closer to your mouth.
Oh, you look I punched it already. There's one.
Well, you punched it trying to fix it, so that doesn't count.
Okay, doesn't count. We're good. Hey, there we go. But yeah, the idea behind it is a quick, bit of text, a 60-second description of something. And then, you would tune in if you're looking for an adventure starter, a plot hook, whatever. And you could digest that in a minute. It's literally 60 seconds of dialogue, right? So you could listen to it and be inspired, and then and then kind of go where you want, like a story starter, for example. The channel behind it, the videos would be 60 seconds of that, so you can watch it and go if you don't have much time. And then there would be, a few minutes or whatever of discussing how I intended to use it. Or in this context, there's 3 of us, so we can discuss the merits of it as a plot hook, as a story starter. So I had them all written down. I know I have this one. I'm going to find it so I can read it. But I might have to use you guys to talk in the meantime. People, I'm sure, are going to miss my voice. So can you try to reload that? If you go off the right side of the screen, you can get to oh, you're already on it. Reload. Anyways. So let's cover the charity event first. So we're going to go anyways. So today, charity event, 60-second setup. Roll that into like a day one DM tip, which is just an idea about how I create things. And then the noob section, we talked last time, all over the place. So apologies to anyone who suffered through that. We'll try to be better. But went through it last time, hit on a bunch of little topics about new players, which got me thinking, since the whole reason we were starting this was to essentially talk through things that you would try to teach a new player. I had an idea to kind of to format the discussion a little bit, just so we can stay on topic, going over, some things to look for as a new player to kind of identify get the lay of the land of where you're at, the landscape, the type of game, and introduce some of the ideas about, player alignment, player style, game style.
Right.
And then go into a couple, from there in the conversation, go into, some things that like you guys think, if you were teaching a brand new player, like what, a thing or two that you would do, what would you do to kind of get them into it? And then I figured that's a good bit of time. So,
Okay.
I guess
Sounds good.
I haven't updated you on the charity event, so let me go through what I know so far. Finally, it's been worked out. So it is an event at Optimal Gaming in Springville, New York. It's going to be going on May 7th. Doors open at 11. There are tickets available through a link that I will post in the chat at some point in time tonight. And you sign up. That gives the event coordinator an idea of how many people are coming. The ticket is a $5 donation. What that gets you is one entry into any one of the events. And then you will have a couple of tokens left over that you get that are used to buy perks and things in the game. So if you are a player in the game, you can get buffs, rerolls, those kind of things. If you are a spectator, if you're in the gallery, you can either aid or hinder the players as you see fit. Right. So there's good, like I said, there's a couple of events planned. So there is a classic tournament style dungeon and crawl made in a mix between the old Funhouse dungeons, which is where essentially you just ignore logic. You go down a 5-foot hallway through a 2-foot door into a 10-foot room. There's a 30-foot dragon there, and nobody questions it. That's how we used to roll.
Yeah.
It was much easier to build things back in the old day. You're like, I'll put this there. How did it get there? No one knows.
Who gives a shit?
Or we just go, magic. That's the answer to everything.
Enlarge, reduce.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy.
There's obviously a reason. I'm just not going to explain it to you. But we're going to kind of...
It's magically shrink you and expand you as needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So what we're going to do, though, is mix that with a little bit of murder hobo horror style, because when you die, you obviously you can spend money to try to get further in the game, but when you die, you can buy back in for $1 or a single token, and then the spectators obviously can try to get rid of you. But the idea is to turn over the queue of players, assuming we have a queue, where we'll keep generating donations because people buy back in or buy resurrections, whatever the case may be. And then there'll be a bring-in battle arena. So if you are a combat lover or want to learn the mechanics, we're going to have essentially a battle arena. There will be it'll be broken up into spectacles, right? Each spectacle will have an objective, a way to win. It might be cooperative, it might be competitive, it might be a mix of both.
Okay.
And players will battle through that to try to win the spectacle, and competing for prizes at the end of the day. So, just like at the old school, like a fighting game, you survived 2 spectacles, 3 spectacles, you get points for that. Excuse me. Things like highest damage, all those kind of things will track throughout the day. And there should be some prizes in the end. And then for everybody that does show up, buys a ticket, we're working on the exact list, but there will be prizes that will be given away through a drawing. We were talking about some ideas about the endless dungeon, which is going to run from basically noon to midnight, or whenever we finish. There being a specific prize for the best performer of the day, going to a drawing, doing something big. We're talking about the specifics, but the gist of it for anybody that's interested: May 7th, Springville, New York, Optimal Gaming. There'll be at least those 2 events to get into. So, like I said, come get in the queue and try your hand at a murderous series of challenges and things as you try to survive to the end of the day. Or join the battle arena and prove your build is the best. Or if you learn the mechanics, just grab a pre-made character. We'll have them on site. Get in there and get murdered for fun and profit.
And just so everyone understands what this is actually for, this is it's called #TylerTough on Facebook. And this is, it's for DMD, which is Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And there was a guy who lives in Eden named Tyler Stevens, and he unfortunately passed. And this event is for him and his family. And they do have bracelets available that you can buy if you do search that hashtag, which would help them out tremendously with medical bills and things like that. But what he really wanted was for us to donate money to charity on his behalf. So that's what we're trying to do. It's a fundraiser. It's not a charity event, but, same thing either way.
Well, actually, let me cut you off there. I got distracted. That's a shock, I'm sure. But the store will be taking proceeds from the event and making a donation to the Jet Foundation. Mm-hmm. So it is, in fact, for charity. He's working out if we're going to split it up between fundraiser and charity. But there will definitely be money.
Yeah, the last time I talked to him, he told me he's not allowed to call it a charity anymore, I guess.
Oh,
so
really?
That's why I was. Yeah. Has to be a fundraiser.
When did that happen?
It was after we played D&D. I stayed late till like 11:30.
Oh, see.
He said that he had talked to somebody about it and it had to be called a fundraiser now. I'm not sure. I don't know. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's for a good cause, so please show up and have a good time. And either way, we'll get the money to the foundation.
Yeah, your money will get you a fun few minutes of being slaughtered in Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe a brief moment of victory. Who knows? And then I think there was talks about doing some other stuff, having a table for, Magic game, The Gathering. Buy in, have little prizes. That's.
Yeah, maybe Werewolf, maybe Code Names, a couple other games. We have a few different plans.
Yeah, there'll be some things going on because obviously not everyone can play at the same time, and not everybody is gonna want to watch other people play D&D for an hour live. Although you do get to.
And ultimately, it really is just a $5 entry fee. There's no hidden fees or anything like that. You don't have to pay to play any of the other games. So feel free to come and have a good time either way.
Yeah. So just bring your singles.
Yes.
And
if you would like to have a better time while playing, you'll have to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who knows? You could just go raw, one entry, and just go as long as you can go.
If you're that good, you can get away with
you
it.
Gotta be good.
Right, yeah.
If you want to prove yourself, come down and do it.
Yeah, the main dungeon crawl is we'll have pre-mades available, but also you can build a legal D&D 5e character. So. You have those options. So, all right. So the whole time we were talking, I didn't look for the stupid thing whatsoever. So I have an idea for a segment to work in. And again, I don't want to format things too much. I don't want, this to become a series of, 7-minute sound bites and, quick hot takes. Like, I realized that I was thinking about the style of this from the original kind of go through I tried. And at the time, I listened to a lot of sports radio, and those often have that adversarial kind of setup. So you have a host and a guest, or you have two hosts, and they obviously just are battling back and forth with their opinions. And then that's kind of what I tried to do. And it just.
Yeah, I don't really like podcasts like that, honestly. And I
I don't know.
I
That
guess
would
with
make
sports,
sense, especially for D&D.
yeah, with sports, with it being so statistically balanced and all that, like, there's a lot to argue about. But with D&D, I don't think that would really be a good idea.
Yeah. Well, and that's So I realized, I'm like, oh, you know what?
No, I think 3.5 was the best.
Yeah.
Fourth edition,
Edition wars.
Jason.
No
is
one's ever
great.
heard this argument before.
Never.
Let's do it.
Everyone loves fourth edition.
Oh God, let's not.
You're the
do
only
that.
one.
Let's not do that. So some of these are super old. I'm checking. This is how old I am. I'm digging into my email because I tend to send things to myself or other people, trying to find this. And of course, I can't do it. So, well, all right, we're gonna do it from memory. This is not going to be nearly as good as it actually was. So I apologize, but the idea behind this, both as a day one DM tip and as a segment in and of itself, was to build around a scene or an idea, right? So, I came up with the idea of just taking something that gave me a spark of inspiration and doing it as a hook in a game. So you know what I will do? I can't do I can't find the tower one, which is the most polished of them, but I did have one of the other ones was in here, which is the window above. So I don't know quite how shiny this one is, but let me look. Well, anyways, though, so the idea being, right, so you're building a game, and you guys are starting out DMing and playing. So, the idea is take something that inspires you. So the one I'm going to pull up here in a second is called The Window Above. I got that. I was sitting in a parking lot, just killing a couple of minutes before I drove home, and there's a big, like old style building. And I know it's got apartments and things in it, but at the very top of it, in what would I guess be the loft, but it's a giant building, you can see the fire escape goes up there, and there's a single like door window, and I'm like, okay, well that's kind of cool. And then I think about that in terms of maybe horror or whatever. What could you do, right? So I put together that became a 60-second setup. The idea being something simple, nothing too involved, and you could obviously build on that. So let me find the file again. That's an episode. And of course, now I can't find I am so good at the technology and the things. Like, I just had the goddamn thing up here. Choto Monte. One more time. In there. Are we in here? This is killing me. There we go. Endless Rebels, window above. And of course, I can't find it. All right, we'll just open up this one. So, this is another one. I was thinking of locations in the game, and I'm like, oh, I have one called the Endless Rebels, which ended up making it into a game. I don't know that I got this one down to 60 seconds. That's the challenge. It's twice. That's the challenge. So I will just read this quick. One does not become aware of the endless revels with their eyes. Laughter and song spill forth from every gap within the long walls. They are adorned with a garish pattern of blue and gold swirls. A cheery cacophony fills the street for blocks around in all directions. As one approaches, you do not see the doorway. It is choked with patrons. And there is not a crack wide enough to see inside. However, the light, the smell, and the cheer are evident from the outside. A wide deck, haphazardly assembled of rough-hewn planks and bits and pieces of patched wood, is filled with patrons. Fragrant clouds of smoke emanate emanate from the endless pipes and implements of the enthusiastic guests, kind of thing. So that's kind of the idea. Like I said, it's that one's a little rough. I didn't work on it as much as the other ones. It's one of the later ones I had, but that's what I would throw out there, right? So to polish that, so that idea came from my younger days, just going out in Syracuse down at Armory Square, and the style at the time was all of the bars had big porches or patios, and that's where everybody piled out there. That's like kind of where everybody was at, right? So as you're walking down the streets at downtown Syracuse, as you're walking around, you can hear music, you can smell the place, you can see lights, and you can tell where you want to go. So there was the goth club, and you could hear the techno music and see everybody dressed in black on the front stoop, obviously, so you know what you were getting into. There was the sports bar, so on and so forth. So I'm like, okay. That should be the experience for a D&D location. And then that became the Endless Rebels. So the setup is just those 4 or 5 paragraphs. I know I kind of read it kind of rough, but it's not what I was planning on doing, so I apologize. But so the idea as a DM tip is that's just a scene. So you say, okay, I'm going to build a session, and I want to introduce the players to, maybe an NPC or a certain kind of theme. Maybe this place stands out from the city it's in. But you insert that, and then the beauty of these is I don't give anything in there that tells you what you have to do. I know who the owner is in my game. I know what goes on in there in my game. But to anybody hearing that, you don't know. So the Endless Rebels becomes whatever it is to the person. So that's the idea behind them. You just take that little bit. You say, okay, so tonight's game, I'm going to introduce this, and then you go wherever you want with it. You can do whatever kind of thing you want. And it's as simple as that. And then you can spin a whole game around that, because think of all the things that can happen in a tavern, right? Yeah. So, but that's the idea. I'll try to do the tower one from memory. So, players, you're traveling, through the deep forest, making good time heading to whatever your destination is. It's much better written than that, but to your destination, the sun is bright, the weather is warm. You are eager to, reach where you were going. You come to a ridge looking over a wide, long valley. The sun, dapples over the trees. In the path ahead, you can see in the distance. Then the clouds roll across the sun. And for a moment, the far side of the valley is obscured in shadow. And when it passes, you see there clearly a white tower that was not there a moment before. You stop wondering what this could mean when you hear the sound of iron-shod boots and mail-clad people moving through the brush. You turn quickly and see a trio of heavily armed and armored men in, blue regalia and white tabards with an image of a white tower on there. In front of them, a slighter figure, hooded with, shocks of red hair spilling out from around the hood, steps forward towards you, pulls her hood back, offers her hands to you cupped together, and says, "We have arrived at the appointed time and the appointed hour. What answer do you give?" And that's the setup.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
I bumped it.
I got you. Okay. So I'm
-1.
a -1 for me. Okay. Nice. So here's the thing. So, with those, the second half of the segment, the idea is always to kind of go over what would you do with that? So my thought originally with that is maybe I turn this into either a time travel or an alternate dimension game. So you could insert this anywhere you wanted in your campaign. It could be a one shot, it could be a small arc, couple of games. And you would play out this alternate world storyline where these people know you already and are expecting you to help. That was my idea with it. The beauty of it is you can do whatever you want. So you guys like how the hooks sound. If you were throwing that into your game, whichever one of you guys wants to go first can, what do you think you would do with that? Where do you think you would take that? What would the next thing be?
Personally, I think an interesting way to go with it, it's kind of an alternate universe like you were talking about, but so that person arrives and they ask for an answer. But it turns out that these guys are disguised, and it's actually like they're servants of a Fey overlord. You're kind of on the boundary of the Feywild. And if you give the wrong answer, if you're a little too affirmative or a little too offering your services, you end up submitting yourself to this Fey overlord, and now you are part of his court, and you either have to do what he says, or he'll be mad at you, or you'll be trapped, or something.
I like that. So one of the things to build on this, and you guys, I'm sure you've heard me. I've done it with you. So not that I'm not just a know-it-all. Also been doing this for a long time. So when you bring up things in your game, I'm like, hey, how about this? How about that? Right?
Yeah.
So what's nice with this is that you can put out an idea like that, and then even by yourself, once you kind of write it down, say it out loud, you can go through and say, okay, how does that work? Does this make sense? What can I do with this? So taking your idea, what would be nice is you could do it, and when they whatever answer they give, you already have you already have how you're going to kind of twist that. Right. So you could turn that very quickly into, like you said, you're a servant of the Fae. But what if you hesitate? What if you say, we say no? What happens? And just do that little branch, 3 or 4 things. Right. And what you'll find is you probably can get 3 or 4 paths out of that, and you flush them out, and your players are going to do what they're going to do. Maybe they do something unexpected. You got to improvise. Yeah. But whatever. But that's good. What about you?
Well, so I thought of a couple different things. The first thing I would say is that obviously there's some sort of protective spell or illusion magic going on, and I would kind of use that in a way to have these people that are here asking this question actually be basically the puzzle that would allow you access to the tower. So depending on how you answer, depends on whether the tower vanishes from your sight or remains, and possibly. So let's say the answer to the puzzle is to just be honest and say that you're not the person they're waiting for and you don't know why they're here. If you're an honest person, now you're allowed access to the tower, and they would disappear. And the cool part about that is that you're threatened with these knights that are obviously going to kick your ass if you give the wrong answer. So are you the type of person that's going to try to lie your way through it and not get hurt, or are you going to be honest about it? But yeah, that's probably how I would lead into it. So it would just be a normal ass tower, just illusion magic to whether you can gain entry or not.
So what would if you're spinning this into a game, what would the objective of the game be? So say you get into the tower. What's the objective once you're in there?
Well, it's kind of like the right person, the chosen one is the one to help them with their problems. So it's like the age-old top of the tower. There's something that needs your help or whatever. Okay. Maybe it's a wizard who's trapped in his tower and can't leave, or there's some sort of a evil in this world that only you can help with because you were the honest person that deserves to help, or whatever.
So, or you could do something like you're trapped, they're trapped, you're the ones that are going to get them out. Yeah. Something like that.
Yep. Yeah. Somebody needs a quest done, whether it's to save them or to help somebody else or whatever. That's your quest point at that point.
Now, I'm evil, as I mentioned this before. You could spin that and have it be one of 2 things. One, it could be a trick. So they're really bad guys. They're trying to get you to clear a monster so they can get something out of it. Usurpers and whatnot. And maybe the players have a chance to figure that out. Or 2, and I always like to do this, some MacGuffin you threw in the game that seemed irrelevant in my Wolves of Winter campaign, the intro game. There's only one item that goes missing during this raid, and it's the most valueless thing that the person had, and nobody knows why, right? So, you could have something like that the players picked up and just held on to for whatever reason. Yeah. And then you find out that that's somehow important, and this is the way you lead into that, right? And that can start off so like something simple as that can start off a huge arc, or it can be self-contained, super simple. But that's like the beauty of these. So my thought when I was thinking about this though is there is a danger with the scene-based development, which I still give the advice as my day one DM tip is that build your sessions, build your arcs, build them around scenes that you're like, man, I hope this happens. How cool will it be when this happens? The dark side of that, though, is the idea of railroading, which is you thwart what the players do to make your thing happen. So, that's always what you kind of have to avoid. And this is one of the things that always gets me with people that run modules. Not that I'm shitting anybody who runs pre-made stuff. Don't think that.
Well, out of the three of us, that's going to be me. I'm the one who's going to talk about modules more
I mean,
than
I'm
anybody else.
running a pre-run module.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, he's doing one. Yeah, he's doing. Look, they're written by professional writers. They have good stories. It's excuse me. They're not bad to use. And especially again, if you don't have a lot of time, or as I think will be probably the next segment or next recording we do, talking about the creative versus consumer type thing. If you're the one in your group that's willing to run the game, you know the rules, the mechanics, but you're not a creative person. You're more of a consumer of media, but you got to do the job or you can't play. It's a perfectly valid option.
Well, and to expand on that just a little bit, from my perspective, with Curse of Strahd, which is the only thing I've tried to run, this is my second attempt, and I think it's going really well. I changed a ton of stuff to make it my own world based on advice from other people and things that I didn't like, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it's not that it's a problem being creative. I'm very good at taking something and working with it. It's just I'm one of those people that, like, if you give me a pile of Lego blocks, I don't know what the fuck to build. I just don't. But once I have something to go off of, I can kind of spin it into something else or add on to it, whatever. I'm just not good at, like, the initialization of it, which I think is the nice thing about a module. They give you a fleshed out world that you can kind of then move those pieces where you want them, change them, play with them, which I think is a good thing to do, because odds are if you're playing with somebody who's played before, they know all about Curse of Strahd, and you don't want to give them that exact same story. You want to make it different.
Or they can just cheaty face you and go look stuff up on the internet.
Exactly. So change it.
100%. So what you're saying is if I gave you a pile of Legos, they would just sit there until I said, build me starships. And then,
Exactly.
See, my issue is I can't, like, if I was to start building my world, especially the first time, I have the strong feeling like I would create, like, here's a town, here's a dungeon. This is going to be an open world thing. You can do whatever you want. But all I have is this town and this dungeon. Sure, you can go over there, and this is my first time, so there's nothing. There's a bear there.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's why. It's one of the reasons
But
why
by module, you have a map.
you have
can
exactly.
do that.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I I try to warn people. So when not that you can tell from the one shitty thing I read and the thing I try to remember off the top of my head, but when I have time, sit down and I like to do the good descriptions. Like I have other ones I can probably find, like that are lengthier. Sorry, I'm keep moving. They're lengthier that describe settings and things. So when I have time to do that, I love to do that because, I try to hide it. I try to have information in there. Your senses all matter. You want to make it immersive, and I always struggled in games when they're like, yeah, you walk into a 20 by 20 room. Like, oh, I didn't know I had my laser sight out and I was measuring. On the north wall. It's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I understand, but yeah, that's one of those things that I'm always like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, regardless of whether you're working from a module or from your own mind, using descriptive and colorful language is definitely very helpful.
Yeah. But it's a very common, and I did this for years, and I try not to now, but people are creatures of habit. Like you said, you get caught. You got to describe or spin something on the fly, and then all of a sudden, my thing was, it's rocky and gray and craggy and rocky, and it's
you don't want to just fluff it out for no reason.
There's
either.
like some stuff there.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah. So everything was my Jamie, who makes fun of me all the time, goes on and on about how that's what everything was in my world. Everything was flat, gray or brown, rocky, everything. So like when I'm building the terrain pieces, one of the first steps, you cover them in a sealant, which is black or brown paint and Mod Podge. You cover them, and then you put sand and grit on there to give it a texture, so that when you layer everything up, it looks nice. So I do that. I'm like, hey guys, here's my progress, and he goes, oh hey, what a shock! Aren't those done? Like it's brown and rocky, and that's what your whole world is. There's no trees in your world. Now, mind you, this is the same jackass that had a 9-foot troll ambush us from some tall grass.
Nice.
Yeah, that was bad. I have to admit, I have a lot of flaws. I know, hard to believe, but amongst them is I have a really hard time, like, sitting back and not like critiquing and talking about stuff. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this with people, because obviously, again, being adversarial with somebody is not. It's fun a little bit, I guess, but I'm over that shit now that I'm old. But I like to get in and discuss things, right? So it's very, very hard for me sitting in other people's games especially when they're new, because like, I want to say things, and I have a problem that because I've done games for so long, and it's just like anybody, if you watch, serial killer TV or heist movies, if you're big into a genre like that, you watch one of those movies and your friends are like, well, what's going to happen? And you're like, oh, well, this sets up that, and that sets up this, and oh, this is where the jump scare's coming if you're into horror movies. I'm the same way when it comes to like stories like that. And I'm always like, just biting my tongue. I don't want to say anything, So Jamie did that, and I'm like, okay, and this was when I was younger, so I wanted to argue about the rules a little bit. That was the last time I got to play in Jamie's game. So I feel bad about that, but I have a hard time though. So.
And I don't know if it's something that we should cover in this episode, but I did have something that I did want to talk about too.
Fire it up.
And it's a mistake that I made. So when I was playing, I still to this point very much care about following the rules in combat. Whatever the established rules are, I don't care whether it's homebrewed or made up or whatever, but it should be followed, because if you don't live within those walls, then what the fuck's the point, in my mind?
Right.
So I was playing with my cousin, and he used a spell that it's summon lesser demon or something like that, and he summoned a demon that technically can't be summoned with that spell. And I kept my mouth shut until the end of the session, and I told him about it, and he's like reading over the spell with me and arguing with me about whether it can be summoned, and I'm like, dude, look, I'm fucking telling you, like, you can go look up the ones you're allowed to summon. It's not one of them. And it ended up being this huge fight, and we like almost stopped playing D&D altogether, our whole group, because of this one little incident. And a lot of the people in that group to this day still don't know what the fight was about. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that's difficult for me, is to just let that happen. Let him summon an overpowered demon, because it's better than killing the whole fucking thing. And I didn't really ever learn the proper way to handle that. So I was kind of curious what you guys thought about that. How would you handle that?
I mean, summoning spells are a particular issue.
Yeah.
Like, that's different than other rules. Most rules, I would call them out in game. And if you know what the answer is, just say it. But if you don't, then go with whatever the quickest answer you can get is and keep going through the game.
Yeah.
But summoning spells are different. I don't know.
It's a different beast, if you will. But well, I know from my experience, it's when if someone is doing something and it's not malicious and they're not cheating for an advantage, they haven't tried to game the system in some way, shape, or form, and it doesn't ruin the game.
Well, and to add context, so I'm a wizard. I'm throwing out my fireballs. His summon could use the same fireballs I was using and do a million other things, because it was some sort of beholder or some shit like that. Yeah. And, and then he's also a warlock who's doing his own crazy powerful stuff. And I'm like, why the fuck would they give you a spell that you can cast at the same level as my fireball that also uses fireballs? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. Right. I was losing my mind, because it's like, why are you now twice as powerful as everybody else? Like,
right, so you were not DMing at
no.
this point. Okay, that's different then. I thought you were DMing.
No. I was a player in that game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it was affecting me personally. Yeah. In a balanced way.
So I've seen this across the entire spectrum of players. So a lot of people, your win first types, would advise that why would you not take advantage of the DM?
Right.
And then people, and then where I sit is, again, if it's not ruining the encounter, the game, the session, certainly you bring it up afterwards. I'm like, hey, I think
I did. Yeah,
this is wrong. Yeah. But if it is something that is clearly wrong, right, or clearly, removes fun for other people, then you gotta sort that shit out right away. So we've had a bunch of those come up with He Who Shall Not Be Named in our Saturday game, where we're like, I don't know if that's exactly how that's supposed to work.
Many actions.
Trying to. So as you pointed out, and this is I can kind of roll this into the next thing too, but as you had pointed out, like, you were very much as a player, like, we got to follow the rules, right? Because if we don't have to roll dice, or we always succeed, or we never fail, or if everyone's just doing shit, right, then what's the point of having the rules? And the whole game breaks down.
And as I said, it's mostly combat that I care about. If somebody's like, he pulls off a really cool assassination and kills someone in one shot, and it's out of combat, and it makes sense, and it's really fun for the story, then let's not figure out how that's supposed to work. Like, I don't care. But, like, if it's in the combat session, then you're all kind of tied to those same rules in order for it to succeed.
Yeah.
Well, especially just like I summon something and now this is more powerful than all of us.
Yeah.
That's lame. Like, you're not even doing anything.
Exactly.
Cool. Like, if you use control water to do stupid stuff,
it's
that's
interesting.
cool, at least.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the problem we had is I didn't nerf a player's homebrew. Reading over it, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be that crazy. And then it did two things. One, it made the character able to do some pretty unbalanced stuff in combat, which in and of itself is, you can kind of design around that. You try to do that. But in the moment, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see how this is, like you do, you're doing way more damage than the other melee characters. You're far more successful at things. Really kind of pushes that curve. It felt a lot like one player was power gaming and everybody else was not doing that.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and this is, I think, a bigger issue if you get someone to rationally think about it. By letting that stuff go, you're creating an unhealthy play pattern where they're always going to do the same thing. This is just to get totally off topic, kind of. This is my issue with cantrips. Like I think you've heard me bitch about this.
Oh yeah,
at least a few thousand times, and you guys have heard it for 2 fucking years. So my problem,
But the first time for you listeners at home.
yeah, you get to hear me bitch about this. The problem with cantrips in D&D 5e is that they aren't bound by any sort of gating mechanism, and it takes classes that are already extremely powerful, wizards, clerics, by extension, like other non like mainline caster classes, right? And it gives them a reliable, infinite scaling, highly effective tool. So I understand why they did it. So I'll bore everybody with mechanics for a second, because I've gotten more and more into this as I gotten older. So in the original editions of the game, your wizard couldn't do a goddamn thing. One spell slot,
And then he was done. Yeah.
yeah, and then you were done. You could only use a staff or a knife. You had 4 hit points. Like, you were not getting anywhere near anything that could hit you. So you became useless, or, as a lot of people figured out, you kind of cheated around the rules with stats and different things, and it led to some weird decisions, right? But you were useless, and then but if you survived to a certain point, then you became ridiculous. And what would happen is you would have this unhealthy scenario where you would just obliterate an encounter, and then you would always want to be like, we're done. We're long rest kind of thing.
Which is kind of a problem now.
Still a problem now. And everybody else is like, well, we still can do things. But you're like, well, I can't do anything. And it allowed, if you were a DM that allowed people to do that, to sleep all the time, every encounter was basically with a full power wizard with a full power slate of blowy uppy stuff. And then the flip side of it was that you only had spell slots were precious, right? You only had so many. So you never, or unless you were specifically preparing spells for an obstacle, it was all blaster stuff. You didn't prepare anything else.
Yeah, because you didn't have enough slots
Couldn't
to care
afford
about that
to,
other
right?
stuff.
And this was back when you had to choose your spell per
Yeah.
slot.
Yep. That's it. Yeah, and that was all you had access to. Yeah. And then, like, as you went on additions, 3.5 put it into cantrips, and they were probably too weak, in fairness, because they were meh at like low levels, and then they were just useless when you got more powerful. They were not like, okay, they were just useless. so 5e tried to fix two problems. One, they wanted your character to be able to do stuff at all levels because they have my friend Jamie's philosophy that, you know, benefit plus benefit plus benefit equals benefits, which it doesn't. It equals broken. That's a good rule to learn. But they wanted everyone to feel powerful and useful and always have something to do. And then two, they wanted to make sure that casters could spend spell slots and so prepare spells and spend slots to cast utility spells and you know, do other things that magic can do, which is wonderful. Good idea. The problem is they didn't put any gating mechanism in there. So for those unfamiliar with the mechanical term, a gating mechanism is something that caps the power of an option so that it doesn't crowd everything else out. And this is the problem. Like the joke about warlocks is like, I don't need to ask you what you're going to do. Just roll your dice for Eldritch Blast because that's all you do.
And the other side of the coin of what you're talking about is monks, who are consistently broken and horrible in almost every regard, despite what fans of them will say, because they're capped with key points and they're always fighting for that action, you know, management, trying to figure out, do I want to use it for something fun or do I want to use it for combat or whatever? And like, they don't have anything to fall back on. When they're done, they're done. And it's kind of tricky to find that balance.
That's why you have to give them like a state they enter, and then they just get all the benefits.
Stop it.
And
There you
just
go.
Kill everything
Well,
immediately.
this was the problem with the homebrew thing, is that there was one option that was just clearly better. So, and shame on me for making, you know, but again, when you create things, occasionally you get a dud.
But see, the issue is only the monks have that problem.
Yep.
Everyone else can do anything they want.
Well,
the time.
and I don't think that either of our options are really the good choice, because I honestly hate playing a warlock. It's boring as hell, even if you are powerful. And at least an Eldritch Blast warlock.
Playing warlock is basically just playing a fighter.
Exactly.
With ranged.
Yeah. And then, you know, the monk, like, it's just, you feel like you have so much potential, and then you try to actually pull it off, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Not for long.
Yeah, so the problem with our homebrew one was, you know, I looked over, the 3 or 4 options at different levels, and I'm like, well, I think it would be more 3, by the way. I think it would be more balanced. It would have been better to have the person's, ascended state, if you will, be something that scales up. So at low levels, you know, it's a little better than you normally would get, but it drains key points faster. And then mid levels, it's pretty good. And then when you get to like the ridiculous levels, at that point, you know, it's probably not as broken as it seems. Right. But I'm looking at the list of stuff the person can do, and I'm like, oh, well, here's all these ways I would use these abilities. Here's all the different scenarios I can think of where I would use this versus that versus this. And then I'm thinking of things like, Stunning Strike, which is one of the most broken abilities that they have, right? That got used literally once.
Although it was awesome.
Because he was so broken, he didn't need to use it.
Well, because the other option was just clearly better.
Yeah.
For him personally. That's the other thing too, is it wasn't like this solo option actually made it better. Did this stream die?
So it says it's still streaming, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, it is what it is. But sorry. But no. Yeah. It also didn't enrich the fights for other people. Like, it's one thing if an ability is kind of out of whack, like the demon thing, right? If it's someone's a powerful creature, but that enables other people to do things. Like, so now you can get now it can create flanking, or it can cause compulsory movement, knock people around the board, or it can transport people. Like, if it does stuff that interacts with other players, that's the big key thing. That interacts with players, that's fine. Again, you got to tweak that so it's not overbalanced. But
Like hypnotic pattern, I use that to end multiple fights.
Yeah,
but I couldn't do anything with it. Someone else had to finish them off.
yeah.
So it doesn't seem as bad, even though really it killed.
Well, it only seems. Suggestion's the worst one.
Yeah.
Fucking, that's the worst spell ever. Like that's got to be a section is like dirty tricks in the game. We'll throw that out there. But yeah, it's one of there's a lot of spells like that that create an unhealthy play pattern. It doesn't support other people. You know, it's interesting. So back to the thing with cantrips. So I get the idea of giving them that, right? And I get and I understand why they would want to scale the power of them up so it's always useful. The problem is, and again, this might be intentional on the designer's part, and actually end up what we call an unintended consequence. They might have designed it so that the cantrips did more damage than first and second level spells, so that you always had those slots for utility spells. That might be the intention.
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that like if you don't allow that, then it's fireball all day long. You know, like
Yeah.
if I have the option to fire blast to fall back on, then I can do other fun stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, the firebolt does in a lot of cases comparable damage to a fireball at a certain point. So you're like, well, what's going on?
Yeah,
So
might scale a little bit too hard. Huh?
yeah, 4 times.
Well, why would you ever use Ice Knife once you have 3d10?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You would
Fire.
for free. That's the thing, for free.
For free, yeah.
So back to the idea of the gating mechanism, right? So if you're going to have those be that powerful, there should be a consequence. So if you were playing, actually this is once again becoming relevant. Original D&D set, one of the original D&D settings, and the novels, the Dragonlance setting, had established this idea that spellcasting was a physically draining and dangerous thing to do for the casters. A lot of settings have this kind of stuff, where using magic hurts you in some way potentially, right? So having that as a gating mechanism, you can say, okay, your cantrips can be powerful, but repeated use is going to, will be a problem. And
Or if you want to scale them up, it could be an option to choose what kind of damage level you're looking to use.
something. Yeah. So like if you had something like that, then those can be better. But the only gating mechanism in D&D is the effect of the spell and the spell slot it takes. So cantrips are super effective and do not take up a spell slot. So that's it. It's a problem. So my thought would be, if you were going to fix them, I've 2 ways I would want to do it. So either way one is you would have some number of castings, and then you begin to have a consequence. So, you can't cast 30 firebolts a day. Again, maybe you get it. Maybe you get a couple of fight, and then something happens. However, but you have to work the rules of it out. But there'd be some limitation to it where you have to make a meaningful game choice. Do I keep doing this, or do I do something different? Or 2, you just have to have the rule in place that this as a combat option is never going to be better than a first level spell. It can scale up, certainly can. So, you could start, like I said, I was thinking, started at, sorry, not enough coffee today. You could start it at like a D4 or a D6, and then it goes to a D8, and then it goes to 2D6, and then 2D8, would be your final form, right? So it never will do more damage than a first level spell, but it's always there. It's always reliable. It's like, again, when you look at like thieves and rangers and whatnot, a lot of their power is the first arrow they fire, the first stab in the combat has all the bonuses to it.
Yep.
And then the second one is just a D8. It's, it's pretty kind of ho-hum, right? Yeah. So for the wizards, the contrast would be when you use a leveled spell, it does all this stuff, and then your cantrip is like, take 10 damage.
Well, what about something like the first time you cast it, it does the scale damage, and then until you take a short rest, it's just a 1d10.
Well, and in a way, what you're talking about sort of is like what sorcery points do.
Yeah.
You're allowed to enhance your spells a minimum number of times, and depending on how powerful it is, it costs more points. But now you're getting back into the level of that monk issue, too, to an extent. I don't know. I mean, it's like there's a number of different ways you can describe it, but it's all the same thing in the end.
Sort of. Like, let me throw this out there. So this is an often overlooked part of the design, right? And I'm guilty of this too, because I don't like quote unquote random encounters. Our tech gremlin is passed out.
Falling asleep. Up.
I just don't fall into the laptop for like 25 more minutes. I appreciate you coming out. Oh, the shoes are off. We are right into slacker mode.
We got to get a couch out here.
Oh no!
Please,
We'll be like, what's that? What's that strange rumbling sound in the back of the podcast? Oh, that's the tech gremlin sleeping, which actually would be kind of hilarious. So
It would.
We'll get a cat out here and a tech gremlin cam, so you can just see him, like see her feet and the cat on. Anyways, no. So excuse me. I fall into this because I don't like random encounters, but the game is designed for characters to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sometimes combat encounters between long rests. Everything is balanced around that idea, and I don't think a lot of games play like that. I certainly don't.
In a realistic fight, how are you gonna get to 8 combat encounters?
Oh, I know. Yeah. Well,
Like, unless you're in a war, or I guess if you are going into a dungeon, but you shouldn't. You're not going to be just doing that constantly all the time.
Yeah.
If you're playing a
yeah. I mean, I think.
inspired campaign for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the
5e seemed to kind of turn away from that a little bit.
Yeah, but that's what it's designed to do, though, right? And so the idea, would be with that. Obviously, you have to manage the resources that you have, hit points and spells and items, knowing that there's going to be multiple things before you're going to get a chance to rest. But yeah, that's not like I try to create games that are like that. So I try to mix it up as much as I keep whacking the table. I try to mix it up as much as I can. So 5 wax, yeah. But mix it up as much as I can, so that there are things like the initial dungeon crawl in our game that was, a bunch of challenges and fights and things that happened. And I think it was like 3 or 4 fights.
Talking about the labyrinth that we were in, the underground.
Yeah. So you go to rescue the prisoners.
So if I'm thinking about it correctly, the prisoner rescue,
which could potentially be a combat or may not be, depending on how you guys play the scenario out.
the spiders.
The spider. Well, yeah, it's the spiders.
Then we got chased by the flame minions.
Yep.
So that's 3.
Yeah.
Then we fought the skeletons.
Yep. 4
Then
goblins.
and then at the end, did we end up fighting anything?
No.
No, we got through and we were in the tunnel.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like 5 encounters.
Yeah, it's 5 encounters. So and that's in one stretch where you don't really get a long rest in
Right.
there. At least not until you could choose to take the rest once the passage is closed before you find the goblins, or if you're you have to have a time crunch in there, so there's a reason to go. But it's hard to do that, especially because players will try to find ways to rest and get around that kind of stuff. That's why the tiny hut is like the most broken thing ever. But again, the rules say you can only benefit from a long rest once every 24 hours. So there's some rules in there. But the idea is everything's built around that, so that and so that frequency of problems creates the need to manage the resources. But if your game like mine, where you're not always in that scenario, you don't have that limitation, which is why I try as much as possible. I try to design things so that you never really know. Like here's the like the blight garden from the last game. How hard do you go against this massive enemies that you can't kill them all? There's way too many of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have an objective, and you don't know what's on top of the cliff, and you don't know what you're going to have to do next. You don't know. So it kind of artificially creates that resource management need because you don't know what comes next. But a lot of times it's one or maybe 2. And if there isn't, if the timer in the game doesn't have the impact on the players that you want it to, then there technically is no time limit. So like you guys have things you're trying to do. You have a time frame that is there, right?
Well, and I've in a game that we played before, I was the wizard, and to be honest, I kind of have a problem now that I've played a wizard because I just find myself always wanting to be a wizard now. I just want to do everything, and like it sucks that nobody else can do everything, and I have to be a wizard if I want to do everything. But that's just a me problem. But I would use the tiny hut, and one of the ways that our DM got around it is like somebody would wander by and see it, and where you are, and then they would like build up people and wait for you to come out and like but yeah, it certainly is kind of broken.
That seems like a dick move.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, the problem is then as a DM, you're being a jerk if that happens every time they use.
Right.
Or
Because then why have the spell at all?
or
bad
all
guy.
the enemies tunnel up from the bottom.
Yeah. Like, or it's just, it's not, I don't know what to call it, but it's not the game playing out. It's you defeating.
Yeah, the DM
this
is almost
method
metagaming you
that
to an
is
extent.
better.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why. So the example I will use, I had a template to modify bad guys in the Wolves of Winter campaign, and that is the Arisen, which gives them a slate of abilities and powers, but it makes them immune to radiant damage. So every cleric is like, you're screwing us. I'm like, but here's the thing. It's only these enemies. It's a consistently applied thing. There's a reason for it. It all makes sense. It's not that I just randomly decided one day that I was going to make the enemies you're fighting immune to radiant damage to screw everybody. It was a top-down design that fit in the game.
They're not immune. They are healed by radiant
Oh, I'm sorry.
damage. Yeah.
Let me rephrase.
So
Even
twice as
worse
bad.
than that, yeah.
yeah.
The
So-
paladin gets really mad when he uses a divine smite on those
And
guys.
yeah, the
It's
first
pretty
yeah,
funny.
it happens once. But now here's the thing. So this is again another DM tip. Never give up free content. So the paranoia of players is a blessedly wonderful thing.
Especially in a horror campaign.
Yeah. The players turning themselves into knots trying to do stuff or not do stuff like I can't smite
Never
anything.
using a divine
Yeah,
smite.
like there were plenty of fights with like wraiths and normal undead. And he's like, I'm not doing it. You're not tricking me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like this is way more powerful than I thought it was going to be. I figured when the zombie plant hybrid showed up, you wouldn't do it. But when the regular wispy undead types show up, I figured you're going to go whole ham on them, and you're just not doing it. Like, okay, great, awesome. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me at all. So. But I think it says live still. It is what it is. Like I said, we have the recording, so it's bound to happen.
It might be just casting audio only. Who knows? But
Yeah, who knows? We'll figure it out.
the green light's
How
on.
many watchers do we have? That might be.
There had been one. Who knows? But no, but hey, we had like 14 views though on the other one. On the other one, maybe it'll go up. I advertised for the first time, put it out in a bunch of Facebook groups, and I felt so proud of myself.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right. So back to the initial point that started that whole little thing. To avoid the railroading part of it, it's when you're running pre-made stuff. To get back to that quickly before we get on to the last thing I want to record, it's important to do what you're doing and what you've done. Go through the module, at least the sections you think you're going to get to in the next session, and make sure that you basically try to think of how the players are going to break it, because they never do what they're supposed to do. Like how they're going to play, how the group runs, their personalities, and try to think of where they're going to do different things, and then have something. You don't have to get super detailed and have 90 pages of notes, but you need to know if the bard goes all sexy time on the barbarian orc dude, how are you going to handle that?
Sometimes.
Yep.
Sometimes you just got
That's
to,
just the way it goes.
and
Gotta roll with it.
yeah, you got to roll with it. And
Play
sometimes,
it to the sexy time.
yes, but no, and sometimes players do things that are unexpected. It's
I would not expect a bard to try and romance everything it comes across.
Cause-
Without that, it's unexpected.
because I don't play my bards like that. Thank you very much, but I'm an old schooler.
Well, so like I recently had, they were trying to kill this guy that was there was a lake, and there was an abandoned city in the middle of the lake, and there was a guy in the middle of it, and it was heavily defended, right? So instead of, sneaking in and having to worry about the alarm coming up and then everyone attacking at once, and there was a dragon in there, they just used control water to raise the water level 25 feet, and then another guy used control water to turn it into a maelstrom. And it destroyed the building, and it killed everyone that was in there. None of them could escape because I rolled like shit, and it killed everything that I had planned to fight. The dragon came out, but he was already beat up, and they just killed him, and that was it. But what they didn't know at the time, at the bottom of the building, there was a phylactery of the lich that they needed to be friends with or do something with, because he's going to come up and get it. So then it becomes a quest of how do you get to the bottom of this lake,
Yeah.
to the bottom of this building that you destroyed, to get that phylactery before some ghost or something else comes and gets a hold of it.
And as far as dealing with the unexpected, especially when you're running a module where it's, at least from the one that I'm running, there are different things laid out for different options of what players might do, but that only goes so far. You never really truly know what's going to happen. And if you've never run a campaign before, you don't really understand what that's like until you're in it. But it can be really, really fun. to not know what's going to happen and have to come up with it like on the top of your head immediately, that is a thrilling and freeing experience. It's not something to be afraid of. You know, you might not do great at it, but it's definitely cool to try it. And the other thing is, really what you want to do is understand the emotions of the characters you're putting in the story. Understand what their goals are, what their relationships are, how they would, you know, react to different things. And then once you truly know those characters, you'll know how they would react on the fly because you're intimate with those characters. You're never going to be that way with your players. You don't know what they're going to do, but you can control everybody else. So that's where you get your control.
Well, I would beg to differ only with the last bit. I think you will learn what your players do. And this is one of those dirty DM tricks you should probably avoid. You will learn certain things that you can use to manipulate the people at the table. It's like, I have another segment to build on, but the idea that, there are no character alignments, there are only player alignments. And once you've worked out what those are, people will do the thing you expect them to do. Not to get too deep into any of them, but
And I mean, I understand what you're saying totally, but like, I'm sure there's a limit to it. Like there are times when your players will surprise the hell out of you
100%,
and go somewhere that you never expected it to happen.
Yeah.
And it's because I think part of that too, depending on the size of your group, is there will be a natural leader who will kind of like try to control things more often than not, even if you try to stifle that. And then somebody will have an idea who's not the leader. And that'll kind of throw things into left field. Or the leader will, secede his decision-making for a little bit, and then somebody else will be making the calls, and now it changes it. And, it's definitely a fun experience to learn.
So I'm going to give you a story about that, and I'll cap off the first half of the discussion with the other thing that I hadn't finished saying because I got distracted. Railroading is bad. Work up options, work around.
Yes.
And the thing that I try to tell everybody, and this is what I got started on and I got distracted from, when I had the time, I love to write up the good descriptions and everything and have that kind of stuff. When you've heard me have both in the games, obviously, some of the emergencies, like the boss fights, there's usually you get to hear, and I think they sound cool. But tell your players, you level set the expectations. Say, look, when I have time and I have a good idea what's going to happen in a perfect scenario, I will have cool shit like that written up. Sometimes I'm not going to have time to do it. And other times you guys are going to do shit that I wasn't planning on. So don't think, and you got to this is training your players. Don't think, it's a good noob tip anyways. Don't try to determine if you're doing the right or wrong thing based on what I've said or how something sounds. There's a clear difference between me reading a written description and me winging it, right? And maybe, and I might be closer to on par than most people or be super far out. But even the best people, even professionals, if you listen to Matt Mercer enough, I can pick up where he's thinking on the fly of what he's going to say versus things that he planned to say. Mm-hmm. It's once you get it, it's clear as day. You're like, oh, I get it. And new DMs are going to be less good at that than they are than veteran DMs. But even us, sometimes, like you said, you gotta you maelstrom the shit out of my dragon. Okay, there's a rabbit. Go chase the rabbit.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So teach your players that it's not wrong if they go in a direction that you don't have prepared. And, not to ignore those kind of audio clues that they've gone off the script, if you will, because again, like you said, and what you said as well, we're going to have a game. It's going to be based on what you guys decide to do, and it may, it might be if you're doing a module. It might be in the troubleshooting section. If you're home brewing stuff, it might be your draft 0.5, not even a first draft because you didn't write anything down. Sometimes those are going to be stinkers, and sometimes they're going to be great, and sometimes you're going to roll with it, and it's going to be awesome. Everything in between. But you got to train the players not to react to those cues because you'll get people. And I think you struggled with this when we started. Looking for what the correct hook was, and this is the thing we're supposed to go do. And that isn't necessarily the way the game works. So, All right.
Best things happen when you are off track.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a good idea to discourage players from doing that. You don't want to you don't want to think that what you have in mind is the right way to do it from the get-go, because I think you can, whether you try to or not as a new DM, kind of get upset when they screw things up. And if you give them that impression that you actually are upset by it, then you're going to discourage that creativity, and they're going to just kind of be more passive, and it's not a good thing.
Yeah, as opposed to freaking out and yelling at them when they piss you off. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, there you
so
go.
let me tell you a quick story, then we'll get into the last section of this on starting out with new players. So to your point, players will surprise you. I was running Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, Dark Future stuff, and I love it's one of my favorite settings. And one of the players who is a very creative person, but not, at least early on, not much of a gamer, was always like analysis paralysis, very quiet, would have creative stuff and would do some things, but wouldn't always was always kind of in a little bit of a box, and you could kind of expect what you were going to get. And there are other factors in here too, but we're playing the Shadowrun game. They go to a cult rally for Clevis, who is in the world of Shadowrun, the racist or people, human first kind of thing. So he is a good old Southern boy, and he's giving a sermon about the filth that inhabits our streets. And they infiltrate this meeting, and they're hanging out down there. And their goal is to snatch this guy, right? So they sneak in, we get through the whole game. The sermon is at a fever pitch, and he's like, now we all going to get a chance to see for the first time how these monsters are as we purge the world. And they drag out a bunch of metahumans, right? So the fight breaks out. They save the metahumans. They take Clevis hostage, and now there's a room with like 40 people in it, just grandmas and dads and kids, just regular people, right? And nobody in my game. I think we talked about this last time a little bit. The idea of assuming what characters do because they know things you don't. It's one of these areas where this came up because nobody has the common sense to spend 5 cents on a goddamn mask. Everybody can see their face. So I'm like, what you guys got in there? They're all terrified, hiding behind the pews. You got Clevis in cuffs. You killed like 30 people. It's a bloodbath. I'm sure the police are on their way. Not to mention more security. Well, what are you going to do with those people? And out of nowhere, this player, she's like, well, fuck it. They're here. We got to kill them. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, they showed up. They're fucking dead. I'm like, so there's like teenagers and like moms. She's like, yeah, I shouldn't have been here. Yeah. And I'm like, son of a bitch. I never, not in 1,000 years would have expected. The other people in the game, total psychotic, evil, murder hobo types.
Yeah.
Totally. Her, I'm like, I was expecting her to be the voice of reason and be like, yeah, we really can't kill everybody. I don't know what we're going to do, Maybe we should buy masks next time. Not that they could have worn them the whole time. But anyways. But yeah, and she just like, I pull out the shotgun and start just taking them down. I'm like, oh my God. And I did not react well to that because I always have a hard time switching games because I like the hero narrative. I like for fantasy. So it's one of the reasons I have a problem with the Gaggle of Weirdos style of game that exists now. But in Shadowrun, that doesn't matter. Like it's completely amoral. And I forget that sometimes. And I'm like, I can't, you murdered 40 people. And I'm like, you know what? That's really not the worst thing you guys have done. So probably should freak out about that. But all right. So my last topic, we got like 25 minutes. So what we started talking about last time and got all over the place with, kind of like we did tonight, but we're a little bit better, is this idea of new people, right? We talked last time about what's something that you wish you knew when you were starting out. And I said, okay, well, let's expand on that and go over what we think we should do, to bring a new person in. So if you were teaching a new person the game, right? So, and here's what I had two thoughts about how to start this, and I'll go through them both. So one is just an idea of, the overall, like teaching them to look for like the overall philosophy and style of the game, which I think is important. I think that's something that needs to be explained. But I got around to this idea of saying, well, I know how I would describe the game to somebody, right? And I'm like, well, you know what? Obviously, other people think differently than I do, and I want to know. I'm like, well, if you guys were, you're giving me your sales pitch essentially. So you're trying to get me to come play D&D with you. I've never played before. What do you describe the game as? And then, what's the kind of the big thing you'd want to teach? You want to tell your newbie player right to start. And then what you think the first thing they should focus on is. So I will shut up for a second. Either one of you guys can take this. So assuming you have a noob in front of you, they've never played before, they don't, we'll assume they know nothing, right?
I'm going to let you go first because I have done this with my fiance in the past 2 years. So I know exactly how I'm going to answer this question.
Yeah, why don't you answer it first?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I had this experience. She, as I've mentioned in the last episode,
Yep.
she has zero fantasy background whatsoever. She didn't watch fantasy movies for the most part. She didn't play video games. It's a very difficult starting point. What I said was, when you watch a movie or you read a book or play a video game, you're limited in what you can do. They've designed special limitations, whether it's invisible walls or abilities to only do certain things, whatever. There's a lot of limitations that force you to go a certain way. And the cool thing about D&D is that, with a lot of DMs especially, you don't really have those things. You're not just going down the path as it was designed for you. You're creating the adventure. You're writing the book yourself. You're all collaborating on that experience together, which is a really cool thing. Imagine if they sold books that were written by a number of people working together to create those stories. That's kind of what you're doing, and you're living it. You're breathing it. It's a very fun thing. And as far as how to describe the gameplay, that's a little bit tougher. But what I would say is that, definitely walk before you run. And I don't know if we agree on this, but I think D&D Beyond is a great tool because it takes a lot of the difficulty out of that in the beginning and lets them learn what their spells do without learning how to math it or use the mechanics or whatever, and just trying to help them with that as much as possible.
Do you think, did you make her character for her, or did you make it with her?
I sat
How
down,
did
I
you do
opened up
that?
the book, and I told her what I thought would be a couple of good ones to start with.
Once you crack that book open, you're like, whoa, slow down.
It's
And
that's a big-
I had some tabs, like we're only going to look at these ones. But I told her that there's basically, 3 different things that I had in mind for her. And one was just a basic fighter. And I said that, to be honest, the gameplay is going to be kind of boring. You're doing the same thing every time, but that makes it easier for you to learn the rest of it. Combat's going to be simple. It's going to be, very easy. And she likes playing melee characters, anything I ever make her play anyway, because she's just not a spellcaster type. But eventually she landed on Bard, and that surprised the hell out of me. It's not something that I would have expected her to do. But her idea was to not have to role play it so hard. She would play it as like, I'm a really shitty Bard. And I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. Just like she doesn't sing well, she's not really talented, but she just, wanted to do it from birth and just kind of sucks at it. And I thought that was such a cool idea. So it just worked out. And I would say that's a cool tip too. If you just design a character for someone, they're not going to be passionate about that the way that you would be. And I think that kind of is not a great way to start either.
Right.
Let them do it themselves as much as you can.
Yep. So I mean, I would argue that my answer is very similar.
Well, let's
Yeah, it's
before you go any further, hold on.
Yeah.
I want to give you a scenario. You're trying to rescue a friend who used to be a gamer that now is living in a code red situation where you can't admit that he's a gamer. But you have you have the opportunity to try to sway the reason he's in the code red situation to think these games are interesting or cool, or at least be curious about them. What would you tell that person?
That's a much more difficult question for me.
Yeah. That's a good thought, though.
I'm
I need to start practicing.
I'm just prepping you for the future. Yeah. No, it's because let me tell you something. While you think about your answer, I'll give you 30 seconds to think. No, one of the things is with a lot of people, a wife and a steady job has ruined many a good gamer or pool player or whatever hobby you're into, and some people think the solution is to get the spouse involved, which is certainly awesome. Again, I would love, when my wife was playing World of Warcraft, if we had 2 computers, I would love to have been able to play the game with her, but we're already gamers. She already liked the game. I already liked the game.
Mm-hmm.
I have often brought up trying to get her into D&D. And she, God bless her soul, she's got to hear me ramble on about it so much. But so far, I've been unsuccessful. So I'm not good at this. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just in case we wanted to save somebody down the road. So
Right.
what do you think?
So I think I'd say, you've heard him talk about these games before. I know you've seen us play for sure, even though he's tried to hide it from you. But you have walked in and saw his how embarrassed he was.
Let's be fair. This is not the most embarrassing thing you're going to walk in on. Pretty
No.
close though.
Not at all. But that's what we do, and that's what we do with our friends. And we spend a lot of time doing it. So I think that if you want to, learn what we're doing and get a connection, and if there's anyone you've ever wanted to be before, then why don't you come and hang out, and we can try to whip you up a character, and we can see what you think.
Okay.
I would play the social aspect of it,
Right, yeah.
for her, because if she wanted to, she would have asked.
And I will preface that I knew that the role-playing part was going to be the hard part. The video game part of it, that you're just like, doing action and fighting and whatnot, that part I figured would be a lot easier. So I kind of like tricked her by going with just that part, and then the roleplay kind of came slowly with a trickle over time. Because especially for someone who's shy, that can be a real intimidating factor to getting into the game. So if you can just convince them that they can kind of be quiet and learn as they go, and take it really slowly, don't just make them jump in, head first.
Yeah.
Throw
that
the
does help.
300-page players, but hey, make a character. What?
Exactly.
There's no dungeons or dragons in here. It's all math.
Yeah,
Bastards.
I will say it is definitely an intimidating and difficult task to try to get someone to play who doesn't want to play. I don't know if I would do that. I think I've never been successful doing it, and it's a really fucking uphill battle.
I can't imagine playing with someone who doesn't want to play as an enjoyable experience.
Well, but it's not just that. It's like if you tell someone the book is good and they're like, no, I don't want to read it. I don't give a shit. And then eventually they'll read it and be like, oh, I fucking loved that book. Yeah. Like that's what you kind of sometimes want to give someone it's almost like a gift in a way, you hope, but it's not like trying to convince somebody to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie. That's a tough sell for me, as it is with a lot of my friends, but playing D&D is a lot harder to do.
But see, the thing is, reading and watching movies is something you consume. It's something you do. This is
That's what I'm
something that
saying.
you have to create. And,
And that's probably
like,
why I would avoid doing that. Don't try and talk someone into it.
Bro,
Yeah.
you should try making a car. Like,
Yeah, I know.
if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it.
Well, that's why, like I said, one of the, probably for the next time, we'll go over the creator-consumer thing. And I think there is definitely a point where a person is so heavy on the consumer end of that, and so light on the creative aspect of it that, yeah, they're not going to be a great result. And I've had this experience because I've had, over the years, people, their spouses or, girlfriend or, their buddy or whatever show up to play and not know how to explain the game to them. And they're, not really into doing it, right? Like they do it because that's what you do, but they're not really into it. So I've had this a bunch, and it's hit or miss because here's the thing. Some people don't realize they're going to like it until they've done it. It's, well, I'll make a dirty confession. So one of my secret traits is I got a thing for like chick flicks. So
Interesting.
yeah. It's one of my things.
I can see it.
Yeah. So
Your kid's face totally ratted you out when you said it. She's like, uh-huh.
well, but here's the thing. So there was a time when I'm like, I'm not gonna go watch that, And then I've watched a few, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of,
Yeah, my mom raised me on that stuff, so I'm pretty much locked in
And
anyway.
I don't mean like The Notebook or anything. Calm
Steel
down. I'm
Magnolias?
talking. No, I'm
You've
talking.
got mail and
No, none of that nonsense. I'm talking about good ones like like Shakespeare in Love or any of the fantasy adjacent ones.
Yeah.
So, anyways, though, it's one of my deep dark secrets. But I've had this experience a lot. So, if to explain the game to a new person, I would take bits of things that you guys have said. I'd say, look, here's what the game is. The game exists on, 3 or 4 levels. It is a interactive experience where one person presents the story, but you are the characters in the story. You make the choices, and you can do whatever you want within the context of the game. So it is collaborative storytelling. The game is also built on its roots of being a tabletop combat, a war game essentially, where you run one character and you battle against enemies, and there's math and there's different things involved in that. And then there's the third pillar of the game, which is the role playing part, where, depending on the level you're at, you're either making choices for this character in the world. So you decide how they react to everything, what they say, how they feel, all the way down to, where you're, if you're deep into the game, where you're going to make choices as if the scenario presented to you, is impact, like you were, is really going to impact the character. Like, you're not going to go do this because you don't want to die, or you're going to go brave death because you're willing to sacrifice yourself for this imaginary person in the game. But what the game is it's problem solving in a fantasy scenario where you can make any of the choices, where you direct where the story goes. And it uses a mixture of, logic and decision making, and mixed with the random element of dice, because not everything goes the way you think it's going to go. So that would be kind of my pitch, and then I would say, first off, and this is, I've learned this later in life, and this is the second part of the question about what do you want to teach the person first off, or what's the first thing they should learn, is, first things first, understand there's a lot of aspects of the game. There's rules, there's mechanical stuff. There's, like I said, there's a tabletop war game with this social game interact on top of it. Not every gamer is into the game for the same reasons. Not every person running the game likes the same things. So you can get into the game at whatever level you're comfortable with. If you want to do
I think that's really important. Yeah.
If you want to do a silly voice and wear a costume, great. If you want to show up and just experience things and be able to make choices but not have to, you can totally do that. You can get into the level you want to get in, and then find the things you like, find things that make you want to play the game, and then you can build on those, and you can learn everything else. There's enough nerds at your table that know the math, but you can start at whatever level you want. And then, mechanically, I would tell you, just learn a couple of basic things. So some things you will describe what you want to do, and the person running the game will just choose that it works or doesn't, or tells you what happens. And then some things you're going to use the mechanics for. Thankfully, D&D 5e is a D20 system. So here's the one dice. 90% of the time, you're going to roll that. You want a high number to succeed. That's all you really have to know. You'll pick up everything else as you go. And it's weird to me because I sometimes forget that people are at different levels and whatnot. And I obviously think the way I play the game is the best way because I have fun and it's what I like to do. And you guys are the same way. The way you consume the game, the way you play in the game is reflective of the way you want the game to go. And I forget that sometimes. And this is one of the things that I would teach, like the overall thing, is that you can be involved in the game at the level you want to be, and make sure you're clear about that with the people that you're playing with. And the game is not always going to have the things that you want, and it's okay to realize that this person's game is not for you. I like horror, and I like drama, and I like a very realistic world, and I like all those things. Not everyone is into that, and I ran into this in our Saturday game with one of our internet players. So I played other games with him before. He's a friend of a friend. I played games with him before. I liked the kid, and I'm like, and he just happened to be looking for a D&D game, and I'm like, well, shit, we need people. So we get into the first game, and then going around, and his gets to him, and he's like, yeah, I'm looking for gear or whatever. I got to buy some stuff in the shop because they're getting ready to go do something in the game. And say, okay, so you find the shop, and then I just by habit, launch right into, a shopkeeper voice, and what are you looking for? Trying to have that interaction. And he sends me a message. He goes, hey, like, just so you know, that's cool and all. He goes, I don't need that shit. It's like, I just want to buy stuff. I don't need the RP for these kind of things. I get that there's going to be times when it matters, but like, I just tell me if I find this stuff. Like, I don't need it. And I'm like, oh shit. Like that.
Did you choose to continue playing with that person, or?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, okay. And then I tried to corral that whenever possible.
It's nice that he was so direct about it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Yeah. And that's
That makes sense.
That's another thing that I would tell somebody, like, so your wife is a good example. And mine would be the same way. You know, I would tell them, I said, look, you don't have to, it's perfectly acceptable to refer to the character in the third person and say, you know, my character's going to do this, to ask questions. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to.
And I have a pretty good example of that too, because I'm playing a Curse of Strahd campaign, which I want to have a very serious environment about it, but not be like over the top about being annoying in that regard. And I want to just throw in a few funny moments here and there. I have one person who is playing a very sarcastic character, and she's a paladin, and it's kind of outside of what she should be doing, whatever. But then I have another person who refuses to talk, and a person who's doing a cowboy voice, and it's extremely over the top funny on purpose. And it is so different than what I wanted it to be, but I'm just rolling with it. You know, it's like you just make the game what your players want it to be. And if you're not willing to do that, you probably shouldn't be playing, because it's not going to be what you expect. It's for them.
All right, so in the last couple of minutes, then let's break it down on a what would you teach them first kind of basis. So, if I like I said, the first thing that like I said, I've already kind of said these, but you know, the first thing that I would teach a new player is that, again, you don't need to know all the rules. You just need to understand, you know, the way things work, and that you can engage with the game in your own level, and it's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter. And, you know, if people, you know, and then lastly, you know, the person running the game and the people you're playing with are likely not going to be the same as you are. And if what the game presents is not enjoyable to you or is not going to be fun, it's completely okay to be like, hey, look, man, thanks for letting me play in your game. But, you know, it's not kind of what I'm looking for, or, whatever the case may be. And people might make accommodations for you, great, but, you know, it's okay to go. And I know we covered that a little bit last time, but I think that's what I would teach somebody is you know, the pillars of the game. So interaction, combat, and then, you know, the role play, the character decision part of it. And then it's, find your style, look for what the game is. And if that seems interesting to you, great. And if not, it's completely okay to bow out and whatnot. You're not hurting anybody. So.
You guys are done talking now.
Yeah.
No, stop. We're finishing up. Stop it.
Yeah.
Steered on edge.
The tech gremlins getting done. We got 2 minutes. So what would you teach somebody first?
I think, you know, I would start off with something pretty similar. I'd say, you know, pay attention while we're playing, find out, see if you can tell what you like the most, and then tell me, and we'll try to direct it more towards you because you're new, at least for a little bit. But what I would actually teach them, I would show them the skills and the saves, and I would make sure that they know that these are the saves and these are the checks, because it's very, I think it puts a lot of pressure on you when you're first starting and someone says, make an athletics check. And you say, what does that mean? And then everyone goes over and helps you look. It's a little nerve-wracking. I think if you could cut that out.
Yeah, and I want to actually add kind of an addition and counterpoint to that a little bit. So some people, when they're first starting out, they do find that very overwhelming. Yeah. And one of the tips that I think is really important for a new player is to say, don't try and find what you want to do on that list. Just tell the DM what you're trying to do. Just say, I want to know if they're lying to me. I want to know if I can climb that wall. And I think over time, as you're trying to do those things, you will organically learn one by one what those things on the list are. And yeah, they're of course going to have to check and be like, what's this do? What's that do? Whatever. But if you're trying to prevent somebody from getting overwhelmed with that initial data and knowledge and just make a character and get playing quickly, I think that those things can be left on the back burner.
Well, what I'm saying is when I, as the DM, say make an athletics check,
right,
or make a perception check,
yep,
they know where it is to look.
Right.
So they don't have to go to their neighbor or their boyfriend, or whoever it is.
Whoever it is, yeah. Well, are you just assuming the girl would know how to play?
I would assume that if I'm convincing her to play, then she doesn't know how to play.
Fair enough. In the
Yep.
context of our earlier conversation.
Yep.
No, both good, 100% good points. And I like your idea with that because both of what you said is I would explain the concept, I think.
Yes.
Before the rules.
Exactly.
So in the game, you're going to tell me you want to do something, and I'm going to decide as the DM which of these skills here is going to be the one that makes the most sense, and that is the one that I'm going to have you roll. So learn with the numbers. Here you go, kind of thing. And I think a good help as a DM, what would be a good just dying to cut us off. Now, what would be a good helper DM thing though is explain that, and then you have a copy of the sheet, so you can be like, all right, this is going to be athletics.
Yes.
You'll find it on your sheet. I see you have +3, so you're going to roll these 20. You're going to add 3 to it. I think it's a good idea. So I will close on one quick thing. So there are many things I think about the modern game that will make modern players hate me. But there is one thing, I don't know if you ever want to get into it with the old school people, right, and really piss them off. There's one thing that I don't cling to. It's not my hill to die on. Is the old rule system that had things like THAC0 and then armor class going from 10 to -10. Like that shit's that's the common core of RPG math. That's just extra fucking steps.
Yep.
For no good reason. And they cling to it like they should be able to do it. Like, yeah, I agree on one hand that I would like to play with people that are smart enough to be able to subtract this number from that number to get a number. And to be able to know that, THAC0 is, whatever it is. But I can tell you from experience, man, with that shit, everyone inevitably just figures out what your bonus to the roll is that equals your THAC0 number, and they just add it to their fucking roll. We did that every time. That's always what we did.
And if we had a D&D Beyond in that area, it would have done it anyway.
Oh,
so
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, and you'll see that shit online with the old schoolers, and like these new people couldn't figure that out because they don't have to. Okay, my kid doesn't need to draw a 6 square box and fill it with a bunch of fucking bubbles to do 4 times 4 is 16. But that's what they teach you in school.
So
that's
everyone
what,
should learn how to use a slide
and
rule.
that's the problem with old school like D&D mechanical rules, and I don't care what anybody says. So on that note, I now have probably pissed off everybody who's a modern gamer from the last episode.
yeah, it's a good way to end the podcast.
That one right there is
alienate half of the people.
yeah, it's going to piss off all the old gamers. Don't worry though, I'm with you guys on a lot of things. It's just not one of them. So anyways, that's it for this recording. Appreciate it. And we'll just say goodnight to the internet. And to you, fuck off. Our tech gremlin is saucy.
Keep talking. It hasn't stopped yet.
Okay, it's getting ready to stop. Anyways, for the 0 people listening on the internet, thank you very much. We'll be back with more nonsense and enjoy.
How many hits do I phone is that?
I only punched it like 5 times.
Yeah, you did. See?
I think it was at 6 at the end.
Broke OBS.
Did it stop recording? Is it still recording? Did it crash?
It has a white screen. I don't know what it's doing.
Lord. Well, you have the audio, so that's again.